What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Good evening, good afternoon. It's been it's been quite a minute since I blessed the stage, as they say, in this space. Welcome to the See Us podcast, where we highlight the voices of the invisible. Um, I, I've been away for like what? It's been about a year or so, a little bit more than that, since I've been in this space with you all. But I felt it necessary to come back today. Now I have been working on the comeback on the relaunch. I needed to take a little bit of a sabbatical so I can get a bunch of other stuff taken care of. Um, but I have been working to come back. It's been strangely difficult to be back in this space. And it's actually related to this conversation today. It's been really difficult actually to be seen, to be visible in this way. After some time, due to some social media fallout, that has, quite frankly, it's had its impact. It's been kind of difficult, like I said, to be visible in this way. But it felt really important to come back on this episode here. We'll be focusing on media fallout, on all the ways that media has its impact. Like, what happens when the outcome, the impact of social media, swarming, articles or whatever are intense, right? Like, and they cause like harm that sometimes is irreparable. So I wanted to focus on this in light of the recent passing of Ed Piscor. Very much thinking about his family, praying for his family and everyone he's impacted, and also thinking about the young lady. I can't imagine what she must be going through right now, but definitely sending prayers out to her as well. But the conversation that comes up for me, when it comes to not only Ed, but like so many folks very similar to him, and some folks who have survived it and some folks who have not. Like, where's the responsibility when it comes to social media fallout, or media fallout, should I say? And I'm not going to have this conversation by myself because I just refuse. And also, I wanted to have someone who I know is very thoughtful, especially in this space. So I am going to be sharing this space with my homegirl, with the amazing Fawn Walker Montgomery. Fawn, what's going on? Fawn is from Take Action, Mon Valley. But here she is, just this giant and this very like empathetic human being. So I thought that she would be great to share this space with. What's up, Fawn? How are you?
I am good. Thank you for that, Shannon, and thank you for being so caring. I can remember a time where I was not doing well, and you were the only one to reach out and say, "Are you okay?" I will never, ever, ever forget that. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. Hello, everyone. My name is Fawn Walker Montgomery. I am, get my camera together. There we go. I am the co founder and CEO for Take Action Advocacy Group. I'm a consultant and just a long time community organizer. And I've definitely experienced this directly, as well as indirectly through some of the work that I do. I do think that we have to define media differently than how we've been defining it because it includes social media now. Like when you go onto your social media and you type something, you become media. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. Because a lot of the false narratives are being pushed through social media. If you even read some of the articles, what they have in there is something somebody posted. So I think we have to start looking at it differently. I know when the show was loading, there was a quote that said, "Little things, become bigger things." Like, so you could just be posting something that you think is small, but it could really affect people dramatically. Mm.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And whew, let me give this disclaimer. This was a really difficult episode for me to do, so I'm going to be taking my time. I might need a pause. So just so y'all know, it's kind of heavy for me. But I want to hold what you just said there, Fawn. You might be sharing like little things, and it feels little to you, right? Like, and this has been a conversation all day. I've been having all day because it seems so small and innocent. And it's like, oh, it might be a quick little jab, or oh, that's funny, like, but like for a person who's being piled on, like, that's not a small thing. Like, these are huge blows, like huge blows. And as we know, like, not everybody survives that. I did a quick search, as you do, looking at, like, the impact of social media or cyberbullying. And according to these folks online, um, it's at 14.9% of adolescents have been cyberbullied, and 13.6 percent of adolescents have made serious suicide attempts, which is a scary thing to think about. I mean, these are little kids. Like, these are teenagers, but these are also like 9-year-olds, 7-year-olds. I've read articles about little babies, like, you know what I mean, like not even breaking double digits, who have unalived themselves. Because of being bullied, like in cyberbully. I can imagine being a child today. Like, we ain't had this type of internet. Like, it wasn't this. Like, it was never that. I couldn't imagine with the entire world, or at least it feeling like the entire world hates me um at that age, and experiencing that like as an adult is like intense. I couldn't imagine experiencing that like before I even had a chance to form, fully. So like, yeah, so I think that was really poignant of you, saying like, like it's, those little things definitely do add up. Now I know a little bit about your own story, Fawn. Can you tell us, like, like, and for anyone who doesn't know, Fawn has had like a long political career, also social justice career, and they've ran side by side pretty much the entire time. I know I'm aware of like how intense that got for you in the ways that I could know, right? But I could never know just how intense it got. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you?
Yes, definitely. Sorry, my computer was doing things. Um, so the media, the internet bullying with me has been an ongoing thing for me from I started from the point I first ran for office, which was, oh my, in 2007. Ooh, wow, I'm aging myself, but it was in 2007. One thing I noticed when I initially was running, I was endorsed by the Democratic Committee. Everything was good. Now, when I got there and I won, the first meeting I came out the gate and I was like, this should change, this should change. So I looked at the reporting of me. It was horrible. It went from, because I was in my 20s at that time, it was like, young person is winning. As soon as I began to speak up, it was angry Black women. Our local newspaper would give you like doves or flowers. They gave me doves because I spoke up a lot. I spoke up a lot. It's documented, and the local paper definitely painted me as the angry Black woman. I was the first Black person to run for a state rep seat in Mon Valley area of Western Pennsylvania. So there was two people that ran after me. Summer ran after me, and then Austin ran. So when Austin ran, we were going for the same seat. His portrait was beautiful. Him and his wife were there, and that was their introduction. And here I am on the front. I had my fist up. They just took a picture from somewhere, and I'm married. I got a daughter, you know, but that's not what was portrayed out there. Now, at these meetings, council meetings, I was just standing up for the people, asking questions. But honestly, if you read that, you would think that I was fighting, I was throwing things at the meetings. The Black Student Union piece was the biggest thing for me when media came into play. For everyone who doesn't know, my organization has a youth chapter. Youth chapter, one of them is my child. They came to us and they said they wanted a Black Student Union at McKeesport High School. So we helped them with that. I was running for mayor at the time. The media literally took that and spun it to basically say, to make it look like a bad thing. Like she's using her this election as like, what? This is my daughter. This is my child who came to me and said she needed help, and I'm just helping my daughter. But and y'all can even Google it, McKeesport Black Student Union. You will see the portrayal of me like this angry, bitter Black woman saying racism in McKeesport when it's not in McKeesport. That's what they portray it, but it is. But they portray it like it's not. So I've gotten that a lot from the media, and I've done talks on this. I've looked at how they portrayed, the mayor from here, my colleagues, and how they portrayed me, who was the only Black person on there for a fair amount of time. And I definitely was the only vocal person on there. But that also leads to like other people on social media, not just the media. People posting things that are just flat out lies about me, not true at all. And I just heard about something more recent, like last month, that I didn't even know about. So it drastically affects my personal life. People have brought these things up to me when we're writing grants, when I'm in interviews. I have a family, and people forget that literally we have families. So my daughter's in school. People have come up to her, my other, and then that starts. Then that's when things get real. When those things happen. But these people with what I call these internet courage will get on there and say things that are just lies. I have had to do response videos. I don't know if you remember with Ramir when we went to Marita's house. There was the mayor at the time to pull everybody else in. Ramir Talley was murdered here in Allegheny County by, at that time, a Wilkinsburg police officer. So there was getting no answers. We went to the mayor at that time. Her name was Rita Garrett. Went to her house, like on her sidewalk, and people weren't, I guess they didn't like that. So there was this social media post about me, and my comrades who went. There was a Zoom about us as well. So I had to do this live, and it still gets viewed till this day, like over 2,000 views or something. And I never understood why people don't just ask me. Like, I cannot stand when people are talking about me and not to me. Just come up to me and ask me. A lot of the pushback I get is rooted in us, like Black people, internalizing white supremacy, internal racism. Because they couldn't tell you anything that I've done. Like, I ain't out here wilding out. I ain't doing great. They couldn't tell you that. Oh my gosh, she said she stabbed me yesterday. They're not going to be able to tell you that. It's just these really simple things. So it's detrimental. It's been detrimental to my mental health. Like you said, as a child, I couldn't imagine thinking everybody hates me. As an adult, like, I'm like, damn, what did I do? What did I do? So I had to process all that just over the years and being a public person, because I'm a public person. So I had to really, look through some inner work to what does that mean for me? I feel like I've gotten a better grasp at it now. But when I started this, I was in my late 20s. So I was like Cardi B. Like, if you posted something about me, I was pulling up at your house. I was just pulled up like, you got something to say to me. I was responding, but it really started to affect my health. My mom was like, you cannot respond to everything. You have to pick and choose, your battles. But as an adult, I can process that. Like, as a child, I couldn't imagine. And then I got it on a local, statewide level. Like, these folks are getting it on national levels. Every newspaper is just reprinting shit. Half of it ain't true. Nobody's fact checking. And it's like, where's the responsibility in reporting? It's like gone, you know?
Yeah. So a couple of things. And thank you for sharing all of that, because I know it's been intense. Like we've met actually. How we met uh was due to Leroy Powell's life being taken, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I wanted to double back to yeah, like the stuff that happened when y'all were fighting for answers about Romir being murdered. That baby was murdered, and in Wilkinsburg, which had a black mayor, still has a black mayor. I think has always had a black mayor. You know what I mean? Like in Marita being a part of like, you know what I mean, in community with so many of y'all at the time too. Um, and I remember like the I remember the fallout, watching the video and being confused, quite frankly. Like, I mean, it was just kind of like running the mill at first to me. It's like, well, something happened. The folks are doing what the folks do until, like some answers I had. And then, seeing the mom attack the girl, and then later seeing there was a gun being waved around, and then later learning that like they knew y'all was coming and they kind of baited y'all to be there. But the narrative that was being told from this office, right, at that was that like was painting very much Marita and her mom as being victimized. Like y'all were coming up there to attack them. There was a secondary video, like, you know what I mean, that was edited that made it look like y'all just like ran up on them and it was like really, really aggressive. And it's like that's not even like, well, who went through the trouble of that? Um, but like, and then how like that fallout happened, and like, and I remember like the way people were coming at y'all, and it's like these are the same people that y'all are constantly praising for putting their bodies on the line all the time. Like, weren't we just out on the 376? Like, you know what I mean? Like, wasn't the police just running through crowds and hitting folks with their cars and waving these big guns around and doing all that out in the name of social justice? Were we not there? Are these not the same people? Like that switch was like jarring. Like it was super jarring. But like also there was a narrative that was fun, that painted y'all out to be these monsters. And it's like, but if you just read a little bit between the lines, that's not true. But folks just don't, like, they don't actually look at that. They just take whatever, especially if they're closer to like one side or the other, like they kind of take it and run with it. And then like the harm happens. I know several of y'all were like severely traumatized by that, and for good reason. Um, so yes, I just wanted to underscore that because that was like a hard thing to watch, and like it was mainly black women too who were like the ones who were being targeted and attacked. It was mainly black women who showed up like shielding, Tasha Chowley who lost her baby. Like, and all, like, it's not like we don't know each other. Like that was wild.
It is. It's the power of that narrative. It's the power, and I feel like it's whoever it is, because I'll say stuff and it's like somebody else will say it. I'm like, I just like literally said that. So it's the power in the narrative. I've been one to always tell my side of the story. I don't listen to that. Take the bigger no. I ain't gonna be the bigger person. You go low, I'm gonna go to hell. Nope. Nope. I'm not doing any of that. If I feel like I need to defend Fawn, I'm going to defend Fawn. If I got to do a post, if I got to do a live, if I got to send an email, whatever. No, I don't attach on to everything. But if I feel like I need to say something, hell yeah, I'm saying I think that we have to. And I know it's not easy though.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I ain't even gonna hold space for myself because it is what it is, or at least right now I'm not. But I'm gonna jump back to how we actually met, you and I. I remember we had met in Duquesne, at a meeting with Leroy Powell's mom. And at the time, I worked for gun violence prevention organization. Of course, you were running with Take Action Mon Valley, and I remember sitting there and like the words just not computing in my mind about like what has happened. And I remember watching the report on the news. It was like late night news with 11 o'clock news or whatever, I think. And watching this report of this kid like giving a witness statement on the news, like 15 years old, sitting next to his mom, and he was completely exposed. First of all, why would that be on the news? Like let's start there. And then you have him completely like there was no effort to conceal this child's identity at all, not initially. Eventually they then covered him, not his mom. Like, and then eventually they covered both of them, like voice was not distorted, nothing, like there was like no effort. But after that first run, like that was it. Like that was all it took, and it resulted in Leroy's life being taken. And I remember talking about this like with media, like, outlets, like, and them acknowledging, like, yeah, like, that was really messed up. So it's like y'all knew what you did. You knew what you did, and then there was no after that, it was kinda just like, "Huh," and then they moved on. And that always stuck with me, right? Like, that's that like, my since that day, like, and moving on, like, Leroy kinda has just been right here. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the basis of, narrative justice being a thing was is off of Leroy. Because it's like y'all killed this kid. Like y'all did this. And there's no accountability whatsoever. It's not even a wanting. And it's not that you can't. And I know there's like, the First Amendment is really like thick. And it should be like, you know what I mean? Like we should have like protection around like, voice and opinion. However, it's not like the media doesn't have like just ways that they don't enter into the space, right? Like they're not posting about suicide unless it's something that's like nationally known. But they're not writing articles about the 10-year-old girl who unalived herself unless it's something that is a public thing or a national thing. So like y'all and they do that because they're not going to harm the family. Like it would be harmful to the family, and they choose not to do that. So you can choose not to do that in this way, which is great, and y'all should. Why can't y'all do that when it comes to little black, brown, and marginalized people and protecting their safety? Like, like why would that not be the case? Or in the case of like Ed Pistorius, like there was a social media fallout. And I don't know that girl. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened between the two of them. However, this was like something that happened on Facebook. There's no investigation. Like there was no nothing. It was just like swarming around, like the little bit of information that people were provided. And city paper, like they wrote about it, and it's like I don't personally believe, I would hate to think, but I don't think that anybody at City Paper had any malicious intent against Ed Piscor, to my knowledge. Um, but I don't think that they handled that well. I don't think that that made sense to publish an article, even if it was just like recounting the facts of what's going on here. What sense does it make to recount facts about like a social media like swarming? Like what's the point there? What is the intended outcome there? Because the outcome that we got is that now this guy is no longer here. I'm curious about what your thoughts are as far as like and I think you said it here, but I'm going to ask a little bit more. The role that our formal media plays in these like these really social social uprisings.
They play a huge part in it. I think it starts with just their irresponsibility of checking the facts, checking the source, which is literally a Google search. It is not hard. It's literally a Google search. You can put things in. You can see what people say. I do it all the time. You can go to people's social media, like you can check things out, and they're just very irresponsible. So they take things that people put out there and they oversaturate certain things. They don't do it for everything. Race plays a big part in what they do. I've seen their compassion and empathy for white people. I've seen it. I've seen them cry for for white women and white girls. But when it comes to black people specifically, they seem to lose that empathy, the caring piece, the checking out the facts shit. Even in regards to the when the election cycles come around and the disinformation that is being put out there by some of these media outlets. They know it's wrong. They know it's not true. They're sensationalizing, trying to keep people in fear. There's so many reasons as to why they're doing it, but they're irresponsible with not checking just to make sure that it's even true. And they just don't seem to give a damn because when you care, you just move differently, and they don't seem to call anyone, check anything out. I definitely want to make space for that young lady that accused of whatever went on there. Like I said, I don't know because I wasn't there, but I want to make space for her. I want to make space for Ed's family. That the media could have just fact checked it before they would post print something like that. And then like I Googled it. I mean, and it came up everywhere. The New York Times, Washington Post. I'm like, wow. And you mean to tell me nobody bothered to see, to fact check this, to reach out, to be responsible with your reporting? I don't think people understand the impacts on people's mental health when you are constantly being attacked. When you might even speak up and say that this didn't happen and they still don't believe you because they keep putting it out and they keep putting it out. And with some of these media people, they'll change one word in the headline and they'll just keep putting it out. It may be like a low news day or something, but these are people's lives that we're talking about. I know there was a 9-year-old, some part of it was in America, that killed himself because he was gay and he was being bullied at school. Even when they report on those things, like you don't hear about it a lot. This was a black boy. These suicides of these kids is rampant, but they pick and choose what they want to report. I mean, at one time there was a bunch of kids missing from DC, Maryland area. We ain't never hear about that. When do they put out, Amber Alerts? That's why I love what you're doing so much with narrative justice, because I feel like we have to be our own media. Honestly, we have to pay attention so we don't reshare the shit either. People do that too. They'll send an article or see an article and reshare it. So we would have to pay attention to what we're resharing, making sure that it's factual. But I would say media, the print media, formal media, they're irresponsible. They keep it going. They seem to lack the compassion, and they seem to just lack the damn sense to do do your research, figure out if this is true, and also talk to the people. They don't seem to talk to folks. They seem to maybe an expert. Let's talk to an expert, but like we are the actual experts. They don't seem to follow up with the folks who they need to be actually talking to, like the actual people.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. What comes up, and so, Fawn, I'm sure you know this. The narrative justice started out as a partnership between myself, and it was called something else. It was a Coalition for Racial Justice in Media. I didn't choose the name, but it was myself. It was Public Source, and it was this guy Latrell Crittenden. And how it became a thing was like it was around Leroy, like and talking to Public Source about Leroy, and I at the time I was impressed about the way that they did their journalism, because they would take so long for their stories. Like they would fact check a lot, like because they were running a story on the program I ran at the time, and they kept coming back and kept asking the same question, quite frankly, in different ways at different times, just to make sure it was right. And it was like a 2-year process. And when they were finally done, we, took the pictures, and I was just like, I appreciate that. And we got to talking about Leroy, and they were like, yeah, we saw that too, and that was really heavy. And so we formed this group, um, to focus on media accountability. Like because there has to be media accountability. Now, in the conversation about it, like from the gate, I made it very clear, said it very explicitly, like y'all are a white media outlet. Like, so expect this to come your way too. Like, you know what I mean? It's not about tearing down it, but it is about like accountability, and we need it in media. Like, absolutely. Of course, Shan, like we agree that should happen. Now, fast forward not too long after that, a lot of stuff going on internally, but one of the things that happened was um Public Source put out an article about this list of hate group leaders and hate groups, and amongst like the Klan and Proud Boys and whoever else, they named Jasiri X a hate group leader. And in this article, this long article with like these different logos or whatever, it's this man's face, and my understanding was because he's Muslim, and they named him a hate group leader. And I guess like One Hood was his organization for being a hate group. And so I didn't see it before I even had a chance to see it. I'm getting phone calls, text messages like, "Yo, what's up with your partners? Like, this is wild." And I'm like, "Yeah, that is wild." Like, I mean, hold them accountable, which I ain't going to shield them from it, because it is wrong. Like, but I did, of course, talk to them about it, and so it was like this 2-week process of me trying to have a conversation with Public Source about this article and how they represented. Just serious, like this is wrong. And they were like ducking and dodging me, couldn't get them on the phone, like, you know what I mean? Ended up sending like, corresponding via email. They eventually changed the article. Um, and I got an email back saying that we changed the article and we had a bunch of internal conversations or whatever. It's like, cool, but people already consumed that article. Like it already happened. Like, and anyone who read it already is not gonna go and read it again. Like you're like, y'all need to address this publicly. Y'all made a mistake. Like it's not okay. Um, and that just never happened. And it turned into this whole thing. And then they started trying to sabotage anything that I was doing. Like, it was the weirdest situation. This is our one progressive media outlet at the time too. You know what I mean? Like, it's so like thinking about like how media, formal media, like treats black bodies, like with this reckless disregard. And then just keep going. Like, you did something wrong. And you just keep going, like, oh yeah, that was messed up. Like even the most progressive, right? Like, there's a lot of good to be said about Public Source as an outlet, like, as a media provider. And I still do like hold that like the way that they do their journalism is, top tier comparatively speaking. However, if you're still going to show up in this way, that is exploitative and careless, then how are you any different than the blocks? Like, like than the rest of them. So yeah, so I think this is the first time I actually like spoke on that publicly. I just kind of like let it ride all this time. But yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that. I didn't hear about it at all. So you just educated me. Thank you for speaking up. Because you said this is one of that word progressive. Jesus. Yes. So I know that we've worked with them in the past, and we've had good experience with them in the courier. But I've always had to, said stuff to them, and they seem to have taken it. But thank you for holding that space for us, because a lot of people don't do that, especially in this county. They'll get with a partner, especially a white partner, um, with money or influence as they think, and they just won't say anything. Color,
Right.
yeah.
Right. 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 But like you said, like narrative is so important. Like it's the most powerful tool that we have is our narrative, right? Like, and when it's being wielded against us, like folks don't realize like how intense it is. Like people literally live and die by narrative, by story. And so like folks who put themselves in position to be like the brokers of media, of narrative, like it's your responsibility, to do no harm or as little harm as possible. And I'm not saying like I expect anybody to be perfect. Um, but when you make a mistake, I think it is your responsibility to address it and fix it so that it doesn't happen again. Because otherwise, like we have this trail of like, unfinished stories because people didn't survive whatever was said. Like, you know what I mean? Like Leroy, like Ed. Are you familiar with, do you recall Daphne Dorman?
Mm-mm.
Daphne Dorman. Now, I was pissed about this, like because it just racked so much for me. Daphne Dorman she was a trans comedian, up and coming comedian. She was a fan of Dave Chappelle and also became a friend of Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle has his issues with whoever, like people don't like his sets, and that's fair and fine, and I ain't got nothing to do with it. Um, but Daphne Dorman would like go to his shows. They would have conversation, and eventually she opened for him, and apparently bombed the show, but like but was like funny after the fact. So like like ended up having like a really great triumphant like set and was looking toward what I understand to be a really promising comedic career. After one of Dave Chappelle's specials. Anytime he does a special, like then there's like trans activists like coming down on his show or whatever. And apparently Daphne Dorman like spoke up for him, was like he's a comedian, he's doing his job basically, and was like, like there was a quote that I thought was like really beautiful. She said something along the lines of like he doesn't punch down, he doesn't punch up, he punches straight. And I can't remember how she wrapped it up, but it was a beautiful quote um, to me. And so, but what happened after that was she got attacked. Like she was getting moshed on, and if I remember correctly, it's for days. It was for like 6 days or so. Just being like terrorized for standing up for her friend, like for this person that she actually knows in real life. Um, and she unalived herself. Like she couldn't take it. And
Wow. I didn't even know about that. Wow. That's horrible. Wow. Wow. I'm just like, what? So she took her own life.
you feel me? Yeah, yeah. So she couldn't withstand the weight of it all. And that's how real it is. Like, I mean, folks don't realize, and it's like one of those things. It's easy to not realize how intense it is. Like, I will hold both of those things. Like you said, folks think like, oh, like all I did was say this one little thing. It's not a big deal. Like, I just like spent my day being mean, but that's not a big deal because like you don't see the wounds. Like you don't see the wounds, but the wounds are there. And the wildest part about this story is like y'all are y'all are standing for trans people and y'all murdered this trans woman. For what exactly? And it was like the response that folks had was very dismissive, even for Daphne. It was very much like, well, oh well, she shouldn't have said, like, you know what I mean? Like, she shouldn't have said anything. She should have been, like, that was the response. It's like, this woman is gone because of y'all. Like, what? Am I tripping? Like,
The lack of humanity from this world. I mean, we can all see that with Palestine, Congo, other parts of Africa that have been going through their genocides forever, and no one says a word. Wow. And even when you brought up the example with Jasiri, he has a family, he has children, he has a wife. Um, they always seem to forget that we have folks too. What if his children would have seen some shit like that? It's like they honestly don't care. When they're doing these things. Wow, this lady took her own life. And I don't know if I can excuse people any longer. Like, I think they do understand that shit. Like, if you're posting something, like there's been people talking about it, you have to live under a rock to not have ever heard about suicide or ever heard about someone going that route from just being internet bullies. So I don't know. I think people because I see the question, who's responsible? We're responsible for our own grown ass selves. So as a grown person, pick up a phone and call somebody before you go posting some things, reposting, or even, sharing your, and if you share your story, say you're sharing your side of the story. I'm telling you my side. I'm using I statements. I'm giving you my perception. Somebody else's perception may be different. It's like having the emotional maturity to say, look, this is my perception. This is how I see it. I would say people seem to be lacking that, and I'm sick of giving people grace on that. Act like you got sense.
that's fair. That's fair. Especially like given the consequences are major. Like these are no small things. And you said it just now, and you said it a little earlier too. It's like you could have just picked up a phone, like you could have just like went to the source if you thought so bigly about it. Like if you felt so intense about this thing that you would like it would change your perception of this entire person. Um, then you could have made an effort to actually like check in to see what you understand to be the truth, if it actually was. Um, and yeah, I mean, like it is what it is. Like like I have been like the centerpiece to, quite frankly, Marita's gossip and rumor mill. And the wildest part is that, like, not to this day, right? No one has ever came to me and said, "Shannon, is this true? Did you do whatever wild thing that she was lying on me about?" Not on one, but and that's also on purpose too, right? Like, like just verbally telling people not to talk to me. I'm crazy. I'm this. I'm that. And that's how you get treated. Like, like it's like my narrative being mangled. And it's not like, and what I struggled the most with is that people would say like, "Oh, well, you just need to get over it. It's not that big of a deal. It's just gossip. Like everybody ain't gotta like you." Like, first of all, I don't need everybody to like me, and why do I care if people I don't like not liking me? Like that's not the problem. The problem is that there's actual tangible harm like that's happening here. I mean, when the mayor of a small town is calling my job and trying to get me like removed, when this person is downtown perjuring herself, like to get me in trouble and doing all this other stuff, like going to these gatekeepers, people I gotta work with, like, like people I don't even know hate me. Like I'm meeting people for the first time and they hate my guts. And I'm like, dog, like, what did I do to any of y'all? Like, including her. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like there's no space, there's no air around it. Like nobody, like I said, nobody, literally, not one person, it's like, "Shannon, I don't like this. Like, did you actually do these weird things that Marita's saying that you did?" Like it never happened. Like, you know what I mean? And quite frankly, I nearly did not like survive all of this. Like, and it went on and goes on for years. I mean, it still goes on in its own ways, but it went on for years actively. And it wasn't, in fact, until my then boyfriend, now husband, and I started dating is when it actually stopped. And that's because Chris just wouldn't allow it. Like, just straight up just wasn't going to allow it. Like, y'all just not going to keep making stuff up about this woman. Like. But prior to that, like, it was years. It was years of not only like I said, it's not just about people talking like, "You ain't got to like me." But when you're actively trying to harm me, I mean, folks like admitting that they're trying to destroy my business, like anything I did, like here they come. And it's all off of like straight up lies. You know what I mean? Like that's how intense it is. That's why folks like fold under the pressure, like, because it's real. It's a real thing.
It is a real thing. Thank you for naming that, because I don't think people say, "Oh, like you said, you'll get over it." Time heals all wounds. It does not heal all wounds. That stuff sticks with you to the point where you start to believe it about yourself. So then you start to act it out. You're like, wait a minute, no, that's not true about yourself. But it gets that much into your head, especially as Black women, because we're so unprotected, just in general terms, just period. So it you start to believe that after a while. You have to find a good support system. But in the Black community, I know some of the conversations I have had are just like, "Oh, Fawn, you tough. You got it. You one of the strongest Black women I know, and and I can dig it. I am strong when I need to be, but I don't want to be strong. I'm tired of being strong, and I've had to be so strong that I'll share my story, and I'm very open, I'm very honest, I'm very vulnerable. People forget about it, and they'll say, "Did you tell me that?" I did a whole live on it. I did a whole panel on it. It's still there. You could go check it, but it's like they make their strong friend repeat themselves, because it's like their mind can't rationalize that, "Oh, Fawn had a breakdown. Fawn's in therapy." No. You get 2 weeks to do that. And then you pull yourself up by your bootstraps that don't exist, or some shit like that. So I think a lot of it is our conditioning and us internalizing, white supremacy. Nope, you be upset, then you move on. And I'm like, no, like I can't move on. I definitely had to go to therapy. I have a BA in political science. They didn't teach me this in school. As a public person, foreign, you're going to do this, this, and this. They don't go over that piece. That goes along with that. I think a lot about Amanda Seals and what she may be going through, because I go through it on a very local level. I mean, she has essence, the root. all these magazines just writing pieces. I'm like, dang, how do you just attack somebody and put their name on the cover of the magazine without even, talking to them? And there's so much power in media, and they know that people have been hurting themselves and harming themselves from these things for years. So I would like to know, where's the accountability on the media's part? Like, what does your policies and procedures say about this particular news station, this particular paper? What does it say? What you can and cannot say? How are you holding your people accountable? I know with Amanda, people reached out to Essence, and the person that wrote the article, they said they were communication. Why hire someone like that? Like what kind of measures do y'all have in place to make sure that this, and then when it does happen, what are y'all doing about it? I have yet to see anyone handle it, good, you know.
Yeah, literally. Um, and for anyone who doesn't know, Amanda Seales is an American Black actress, but she's also, a staunch supporter of social justice and Black folks specifically. Um, and I'm gonna play this clip actually that Fawn actually sent to me of her just being attacked for what seems like no reason, like none at all. So I'm gonna try to play it. It was weird acting earlier. If it doesn't work, then we'll just talk about it. But let me see if I can get it to play. Uh, all right, I don't know what's up with the audio, so we just gonna talk about it. but yeah, so like in the video clip, it's Amanda Seales saying basically she woke up and found herself on the front of an article. It was the Grio trashing her for whatever reason, and she was simply asking the question like, I think people are weaponizing media. Like, I don't understand why I'm even like why they're even talking about me. She, posts a video clip of her podcast saying that like, there was a time when Wendy Williams like went on like this week long hunt for someone to trash her name when she was a member of the group Poetry, and for no reason, like, and nobody called, like nobody had anything to say, but it was like this attempt. It was an attempt, like an actual attempt, to create a social media lynch mob against this woman for whatever the reason is, and she named at the beginning, it's like, it's clearly for clicks, like, so, as far as she's concerned, it's very exploitative. Like, folks are just looking for an opportunity to get their clicks up and like benefit from like tearing her down in this way. But like, she's an actual person, like you said, like she has a family, like, what I mean, she's a human being, like like, and apparently, if I understand correctly, that like she's often left out of spaces she belongs in, for whatever the reasons are, and it makes me feel like I wonder if it's because of the way that folks talk about her. But what are your can you
Mhm.
say more about your thoughts about, like, Amanda Seales?
Yeah, that really, really affected me. And I think because we have similar stories. She's an activist, I'm an activist. I'm outspoken, she's outspoken. We beating the drum for Black people. And sometimes people villainize that. A lot of times, I'll say that. People villainize that. If you say Black liberation, Black Panther, Black Power, then you are the enemy. And even Black people do that to each other. And with Amanda's situation, she's a longtime actress. She should be in the conversation about Black Hollywood. You can look up her record. She's been in a lot of things. She's a comedian. And then when they have this conversation about Black Hollywood, her name is left out a lot. And she has spoken up for herself, which she should. She has said this in the past, and she said it again recently, how she felt like Black media didn't really support her. And that's all she said. And she has said this before. And she has also done some problematic things in the past, according to certain people. And I don't agree with everything I don't agree with everything anyone says. So there are some things, I guess, that she has done in the past she has owned up to, or she might have just had a different perspective on it. But nothing deserves that. response. She didn't do anything that egregious that deserves Essence, the Griot, the Roots, and other Black publications. What they did was they put a picture, two of them put a picture of her right in front of the article. And they're like, Amanda Seals, did she bring this on herself? Now, I don't know the exact title of it was something like that. Two of them, her name there. The other ones just had her face there. I mean, and it was this went on for a week, then it stopped, and then just a few days ago, something else happened. And it's like, come on. This is an actual person. She's an actual human being. She has put her life on the line numerous times for us. And we're going to just attack her because she's saying she simply feels like she's, left out of things. I guess there was a party or something a few years ago. She was asked to leave. She spoke out about all that, controlling her narrative, which is something we should all do. And that's all she did. And they literally are coming after this woman, making the Essence article was like, we got to talk about just because you're good at your job doesn't mean you're likable. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Like, what does that have to do with? Are you critiquing one of her acting jobs? Are you critiquing something she said? If you're going to be out here critiquing folk, at least let it be based on principle. Maybe something they wrote. I have a column in the Courier. If you want to critique that, critique that. That's cool. But you could leave the personal stuff and everything else out of it. If you're just talking about the article, so they took that and used that. They definitely weaponized it against her and putting all these false narratives, and she's had to combat that, which is stressful enough. On top of just being Black and then being a Black woman in this country, on top of that, she has to defend herself against Black people, and that feels different. People need to understand that when that's coming from our people, for people like me, you, and Amanda who fight so hard for our people, that shit cuts like a knife. A
Man.
knife. Like it hurts so much when you literally, and you've been with me. Both of us have almost got hit by cars, almost got killed, get death threats, and these folk will come at us so hard. That kind of pain, I can't even put into words. I know you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking with it, what it made me think about is like, like there are these ways in which media is weaponized, either from like, formal outlets or informally, where folks are just utilizing social media to create monsters out of people. But I'm also thinking about the other side of that is where folks will use media to basically create a covering for themselves, and it doesn't matter what wild things they do, they're never held accountable for it. Never, not once. In fact, there are excuses made for their behavior. Like people are litigating on their behalf. Like, even though like what they're doing is like super wild, but because they have like this huge, armor of branding, like in marketing, like to kind of like create this what is it, like parasocial relationship with folks, that folks feel like I know this person deeply, and I know they would never do this thing that I'm watching them do. Like I'm physically watching them do, would never happen. And so like the other side of it is like media narrative is the most powerful tool that we have. And so like you said, like we should absolutely own our narrative, but I'm thinking about when folks then weaponize it in the other way, right? Like they're exploiting their own narrative, they're weaponizing their own narrative, to protect themselves from being held accountable for like the just garbage ways that they've been showing up in the world, like it's really antisocial behaviors. I'm curious of what your thoughts might be on that.
With how people are showing up so callous.
Uh, I mean that, but more so like how folks are able to utilize, like create narrative around them to buffer them from their actual lived reality, especially when they're causing harm to other people. But like folks are seeing this narrative that they created about themselves, which is like really like, honest and good and righteous or whatever, but their behaviors is something else. in that, like, that dissonance is like folks are choosing what they're seeing, what they're saying versus what they're actually seeing.
Hmm. Oh yeah, people. When you say that, I think of Trump, or 45 as we call him sometimes. That's who I think of, who is really good at controlling their narrative, and using it as a way to control their followers. I think it's quite dangerous. People have to be able to see in between that. But the media plays a part in that, because the media preys on fear, and a lot of things they put out are based on fear. So people like 45 will take that and manipulate their narrative to feed off of that. A lot of people do that. A lot of people empower do that, and they've mastered it, and that's why they're able to convince people to do certain things. People take classes on this, especially politicians. I'm a former politician, and some conversations I've had with white men, white politicians, and they're like, "Oh yeah, fun. You take this class, and then you learn how to." I'm like, "What?" Like y'all sit, they sit down there and they think about these things. So I think people have to be able to read between the lines of some of those things, and think for themselves. There's a lot of group thinking that is fed into by a lot of internet bullying as well. But you have to be able to, think for yourself individually. But people do that, and they master it, and you can tell. You can almost tell who does it, because when they speak, you'll even believe. Like, people are so moved by speeches nowadays, and I'm like, all right, well, they just saying words. They just saying stuff, y'all. Y'all got to look at their record and see if they've actually done some of the things that they say they're going to do. So I feel like people just, in my mind, always go to a solution place. Even though you didn't ask that, my mind goes to a solution place. So people do it, but I think we have to be smarter. We got to take that extra step. Um, the internet is good and bad, and now that we have it, we have to make sure that we're using it responsibly, because people are dying.
Literally, people are literally dying. And so since we're here, like I wonder what tangible safeguards can we have against like media. I mean, and it's all new, right? Like social media is relatively new and it keeps changing, like it's a whole different world, but we do have to be responsible for it. And so like one thing is like, being careful not to reshare stuff before we look at it. And I know I'm guilty of that too, like, like seeing something and then off rip running with it. But being careful of that, but also as you said earlier, I think it's important that like, like if it especially when it has to do with a person, if you feel so moved by whatever you were, told or came across, and they are in your actual community, like reach out to them. Like, like you big boss dog, like then say it with your chest. Like say it to them. Like, did you do this thing? And if they did, then you can have a conversation with them like, I ain't like that, like, I don't like that you did that, and it can move however it needs to move. Or you might find, and I feel like it's often, more often than not, that you'll find that what you heard wasn't actually true. And if somebody had an ulterior motive about like sharing that narrative. So I think like a couple of things we can do is just be mindful, like you said, of what we're sharing, but also fact checking, especially when we're talking about people in our actual community. You know what I mean? Like you might not know them well. And I'm notorious for showing up to folks. I don't care if I know you or not. Like, did you do this thing? Like I ain't like this, or like this wasn't all that. Like I see what you was trying to do there, but let me tell you what the actual impact is. Because I like, if it's gonna change the way that I view you, then I think that's a big enough thing to stop, to have some pause and like, all right, we need to check in, because I don't, like I just don't want to, I don't want to mischaracterize somebody in my mind, because that's power. um I'm wondering if there are anything else that can be done, like on a political level, on like a state level, on a whatever. One thing I think absolutely should happen, especially when people are unaliving themselves. I think anyone who's played a role in that, especially when it was like malicious, even if they didn't know that was the outcome that was going to happen, but if your intention was to harm, and then the outcome is ultimate harm, I think you should be held accountable. Like I think there should be punitive measures. Like there should be charges. Personally, is how I feel. But fine, I'm wondering in our last few minutes here, and I know you got a jet. If there's anything else that you think that people can do to safeguard against, like like the media harm.
Hmm. Yes, I think that people need to. And before I go into that, something you said made me think of like good and evil. And over the last, I say, 10 years of my life, I'm seeing that that doesn't really exist. There's good, evil, and then there's the middle. I seen a play. What was the play called? Dorothy. What's the Dorothy? The Wizard of Oz. The witch. I seen. I forgot what it was. A play about the Wicked Witch. But it showed like her side.
Wicked, isn't it?
Wicked, yes, Wicked, and it really got me to think. Cause I said, you know what? And Marvel does a good job of this with their villains. There's always like a side, like a backstory to some people. So talking to people and going people face to face really helps because you get their perception of it and you see that they weren't right, you weren't right. There's always like a middle. It's not an excuse, but it's a way of like, okay, maybe this is why they did it. Just want to offer that to people who may not be used to direct communication, like me and you, because we'll roll up on you. You know, we're direct communicators, but it helps. So we should be, if you know that person, reach out to that person. If you don't know the person, you wasn't there, maybe don't say anything. Maybe reach out to who is saying something and talk to them. But we should all be controlling our narrative. I got that advice early on from one of my mentors, and that's what I've been doing. That's the only reason I have social media is because I can control that because I can say it. So I feel like we should be controlling our narrative. If you're going to be a public person like myself, I have a brand. I know that. So I don't let my name be attached to everything. I make sure that there's alignment with my values before I do things. We have to make sure that any way we can control our narrative, whether that be social media, whether that be newsletters, whether that be email, whether that be not talking to certain people. We don't talk to certain media sources. Um, we have to recognize our role in how we shape media because as Black people, sometimes we are okay with the narrative of coming from the hood and turning your life around. And that shit happens, of course, but we have to be careful about spinning that. So if you're going to be in the public, maybe you were like, if people are going to report on me, I tell them what to say. And if these people have harmed me in the past, I don't do interviews with them. We have to have those kind of boundaries. So I think we need to be controlling our narrative. We should be saying that we should be telling our own story. There's the Black Media Network. There's networks that are just ran by Black people. And that doesn't mean they're right all the time either. You should research them. Just like we are educated consumers, we got to think the same way about media and about what we digest and what we're feeding to ourselves. So we have to make sure that we're careful what we're watching, what we have our kids watching, what's shown in our community. So we have to control our own narrative. We have to talk to each other. All of those are great things for abolition, which is what I am, to abolitionist. So any way that we don't have to use the system, and I always tell people this, like we do talk, especially in the hood. When things go down, we're talking to each other. No one's calling the police. Like we're talking to each other. We have to keep that same thing. I know social media is out there now, and sometimes people use that to vent whatever works for you, but you have to understand that's leading to death. Just not with people harming themselves, but a lot of the gang shit starts on social media, starts on Facebook. I'm constantly mediating between these arguments on social media. So I think we have to recognize, like I said, social media is media, and you have to be careful what you're putting out there and be more responsible with it. And if you feel like someone's coming at you, defend yourself, control your narrative, respond. People are going to tell you, don't respond. Now, if it's a legal thing, I get it. Do what talk to your attorney. But, like, no, hell with that. You have to say it because a lot of people, if they don't know the truth, then they'll, we all know people are not responsible enough to call and say, "Hey, does this happen?" So you should be putting it out there yourself. And it's legally, I hear you about a law, and I definitely would be down to pursue something like that. And I've heard of people going. getting charges for some of these things in the past, but not the media. Not the media.
Yeah, people have tried with the media, but they're protected by the First Amendment. But just because they are doesn't mean that there's not an angle in there. Doesn't mean that there's not something that could be done. So I think there definitely should be, some legal ramifications for the way that media shows up. Just like for individuals, I think there should be legal ramifications. And there are cases where folks have caught charges for participating in bullying, cyberbullying. But I think that should be, like we should make that a real thing, because it happens so often. People just are gone like steam, because their narrative was ripped to shreds. I mean, it was pulled right out. It's like you're having your spirit pulled right out of you, you know. But we're gonna call it for today. Fawn, I appreciate you hopping on. Like I said, like I know your story, and I know like how caring you are about these types of subjects. So I appreciate you sharing this space with me today.
Thank you so much for having me and for making the space and for all you do for real and having the courage to speak up about these things and not practice safe activism. I thank you for that because that shit is not helping us. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So fun. I will see you around.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that'll do it for today. I appreciate y'all hanging out today. If you have thoughts around like media fallout, social media bullying generally, and what we can do about it, like please definitely like reach out, like comment, and let me know. It is something like I said, is very near and dear. I told a little bit of my story today. Like maybe one day I'll tell my story. But this is a subject that touches me quite directly. Like it's such a pervasive issue that I don't think we give enough space for. So if it is something that like that's happening, you can do something like right now. The first thing you can do is like before you share something, I'm gonna say this to you and I'm gonna say it to me. Before you go sharing stuff, like why don't you fact check it first? Like like see if this is actually what it is. And what I will say is something that I would love to see people practice more of, if at all, is if something when it comes to people in your actual community, like, and it could be your direct community or like your general community, Allegheny County or wherever, um, that if you learn something and it changes your perception of a person, like if it changes who that person is to you, consider reaching out and asking them like, yo, like I heard about this thing and I ain't like it. I didn't think it was right. Like, did you actually do this? And commit to having the courage to, sitting with that, with confronting folks around like things that either you heard that they done or that they actually done, and then go from there. Because so often we're coming in contact with false narratives, with straight out lies, and the intention is to hurt that person. Like that's the intention. That's the beginning, middle, and end. And sometimes that ending is really final. Is really final. So that's gonna be it for today. Like I said, we running this thing back, so CS will be fully back shortly. But I am gonna run a couple of episodes in the next few weeks or so because there are some things that have been taking place that has been important, and I appreciate you all rocking with the show. Like I mean, I keep trying to like convince myself that it's not a big deal, that I'm small potatoes. Like if you know me, you've heard me say that. But if I sit back and look at like the impact this space has had, we've been able to contribute to a lot of beauty in the world, a lot of like beautiful things happening, justice being served, whatever that means, and people being heard. So that's why I'm here. Like that's why I'm back. It was hard for me to be in this space again. Quite frankly, like this is a really great topic for that. It was hard for me to come back and be visible with you all, and be quite frankly exposed and vulnerable in this way. But it just mattered more. Y'all mattered more. So here I am. Here we are. I will look forward to seeing y'all again next week. I have another show lined up, so I'll let y'all know about that. Please share this episode. I felt like it was really important. It'll speak to someone who might be, considering like hanging up the towel. And so if that is the case, like you ain't alone. Like you're definitely not alone, and you don't deserve it. But we'll check you out next time.